for commissioners. Pam, I believe you're kicking us off today. So do you want to get us started?
Sure. It's sort of appropriate that we're doing this during National County Government Month. I selected this date totally on accident. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of criminal justice services and kind of what we're doing, and give you an opportunity to ask questions and learn more about the department. We have 54 team members, all professional folks who've got over 373 years of experience with Douglas County. So we've got some credible people that make the things that criminal justice services work. I kind of provided you a brief summary of some of the services that we provide, and I can run through those with you all and give you an opportunity to ask questions at each section. I invited some of my staff here today that really kind of oversee the functions that I don't always know every detail. Shannon Young is the supervisor for adult services and does all the alternative to jail programs for the county. And Lee Hausman oversees all the child services programs for criminal justice services. So let's just start off. We'll start off by doing kind of an overview of the adult programs. And then what I try to do is kind of align for you kind of what everybody's doing. First of all, we have pretrial services. And we've had that program since 2017. We've been doing first appearance reviews for pretrial clients. And it kind of gives you I sent a table to you all. Unfortunately, I don't have it shared on the screen. But we're serving a lot of folks on electronic monitoring on pretrial, and also a lot of folks not on electronic monitoring. So in 2020, we served 188 people on pretrial that were on electronic monitoring, and 255 that were not on electronic monitoring. So it kind of varies. It's really depending on what the court wants to have happen with a client. We recommend what we think is the most appropriate based on the risk score for the praxis. But so basically we spend our time trying to determine what the risk score is for that person. We generally don't ask for a cash bond unless it's enhanced supervision, and that's usually somebody who's on house arrest for a fairly serious crime, or potentially are accused of a serious crime. And then all other cases, there's no cash recommended ever. That doesn't mean that the courts don't look at that and make different decisions from us, or the district attorney staff don't. We do track concurrence rate, and we recently shared that. So there's the concurrence rate and there's an acceptance rate. Our acceptance rate is like 86%. Our concurrence rate, where the court and the DA agree with us, is at about 75%. Now the people are still getting supervised. We just don't necessarily agree on what the conditions of that supervision should be. And sometimes that means they go up, wanting us to do a little more with electronic monitoring or house arrest or something like that. Or that could mean they want to do less. So that kind of varies. And we're in the process of reviewing that with the district attorney staff and the judge. We're going to have a meeting with our stakeholder group for pretrial in May, and talk about concurrence and the concurrence rate, and talk about the approval rate as well, because it's really, really high as compared to some other jurisdictions.
Pam, this is Commissioner Portillo. Do you mind if we jump in with questions?
Sure. No, go ahead.
So you said that you typically don't ask for cash bail. Do you kind of have a percentage of how often you're recommending cash bail versus how often you're not?
Well, the only cases we ask for it on are enhanced diversion cases, or on enhanced supervision cases. I don't know, Shannon, do you happen to know how many enhanced cases we have? It's not very high.
No, and I don't have that number right now, but we can get that number for you. And the only cases that score in the enhanced maximum category would be those off-grid crimes, and like level 1 and level 2 offenses. So like murder, rape, and those high-level sex offense cases. So we typically do not get a lot of those cases.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Do you have any other questions about pretrial before we move on to the next?
Could you just help define for us the difference between acceptance and concurrence?
Acceptance means that they're assigned to pretrial, but we don't necessarily in most cases we agree, but in some cases we don't. So concurrence is where what we recommended is what they approved. And in 75% of the cases, they approve exactly what we submitted. Then there are cases where they don't, but they still assign them to us for supervision. It's just the conditions are not what we originally recommended to them. So actually, the acceptance rate is much better than the concurrence rate, but we want the concurrence rate to be higher. We don't want to have the district attorney's staff or the courts applying a cash bond when it's not necessary. So that's usually the difference, not always. The second program that I talk about is enhanced diversion, which we just started in February of 2021. And I think we currently have 4 clients. Yeah, we have 4 clients and 6 pending cases. What's happening is the district attorney's staff determined that they want us to look at them to assess them for enhanced diversion. I'm getting my terminology all messed up. They want us to look at them for enhanced diversion. Then Shannon and her staff do a RANT assessment. It's a quick assessment to determine need and risk, low need, low risk. And so Shannon and her staff submit those reports to the district attorney, and then they make determination whether they need to be an enhanced diversion, regular diversion, or go on to court proceedings. And so we've actually, I think we've done 14, is that right? 14 assessments?
Correct. We've had 14 cases sent over.
Yeah, and 4 have been approved, and then there's still 6 pending. So what's happened in a number of cases that the person might come up as low risk, low needs, and then the DA will determine that they should just go on regular diversion. So it's been a better way of assessing, really not putting somebody in an over supervised situation. Even though it's called enhanced, I mean, we're trying to provide support to those clients, and there's prescribed timeframes. So we don't have anybody on supervision for long periods of time. It's kind of individualized based on their need, if it's alcohol, drugs, mental health, or whatever that is, and we try and get them set up with services. So that's relatively new and haven't had as much experience with that yet as we hope to have. And then behavioral health court started in January of 2017. We currently have 17 clients on behavioral health court, 4 pending. And that's where it's a fairly intensive program. They meet with the judge weekly, depending on what level they're on, which phase of the program they're on, is how determines how often they meet in court, and what level of supervision they have as they earn more privileges to kind of back down the intensity. They receive services from DECA and from Bert Nash, and that's all paid for by the county. And all these programs I'm describing to you so far are county funded. And there's no cost to clients for PHC, free trial, enhanced diversion. So that's kind of a unique situation that we have in Douglas County, because we get so much support from the county. We're not asking clients to come up with funds to pay for services or supervision.
And this is Commissioner Kelly.
Sure.
So behavioral health court is one of those programs we've had sort of for a while now. How many graduates have we had, and have we seen any of the graduates reoffend?
They do track that data, and I don't recall the total number of graduates we've had. Do you know, Shannon?
It looks like we've had 33 graduates.
And we do track, I think, for a year or 2 years if they return to court or jail. And I don't know that data. Now, Matt Cravens, the data analyst for CJCC, has done a recent review of BHC and did present that to the BHC team, I want to say last week. And it's looking really good. We're not doing as many jail stays or sanctions that we were in the previous evaluation that was done by KU. And the other thing is we're doing a lot more positive incentives versus responses in a negative sanctioning type way. So the outcomes looked really, really good. I was really impressed with how they've kind of they took the information that Jason gave them and turned that around and really have made some improvements to the program. And even during COVID, I think it was pretty impressive what they've been able to accomplish. I will say during the evaluation, I was going to talk about that at the end, that Judge McCorney had talked to me about wanting to look, the court was interested in creating a BHC light. They have a number of clients who are referred for behavioral health court who really don't have, their issues aren't significant enough that they would really benefit from something as intensive as behavioral health court. And so the judge had indicated to me that Judge McCabe would be reaching out to talk about what a BHC light kind of program might look like. And I can't really say because I haven't really talked to them about it specifically or personally, but it might be a good tie-in with enhanced diversion. I mean, there are lots of ways it could be addressed. I hate to keep creating more and more programs, but I think we could serve the same people under one umbrella, and then make their supervision specific to their concerns or issues or problems.
Pam, this is Commissioner Portillo, can you help me understand how, and we have kind of competing goals here because we don't want to over supervise folks. That's been shown to increase recidivism. So with the BHC light, it really sounds like that would just be incorporating some of the best practices and problem solving courts into supervision, period. Do we need to create a whole new specialized court for that? Or is that something that you can do? Like, I'm thinking about contingency management and the positive reinforcements that you just said increased outcomes for folks going through BHC. We know from the research that if you just use contingency management in supervision generally, it increases outcomes for all clients. So rather than maybe a BHC light, could it just be reforms in supervision?
Yeah, I think that those clients could fall under enhanced diversion, and then we have prescribed timelines. And it's more of a hand-holding support for those clients that probably can do most of this on their own, but just need somebody to kind of encourage them to follow through and reward them when they're doing the right thing. I mean, that's the way I see it aligned. I have not spoken to the judges, so I'm really talking out of school in terms of what they want, because I really haven't had a conversation with them. But to me, it would make sense with some of the goals that I have for the department in terms of trying to supervise less and not make more high risk people out of low risk people by over supervising. I mean, the risk principle is what drives everything we're doing over here. We're trying to make sure that we're supporting clients in the community, but we don't want to over support too. So I think that's why I'm saying I don't think we want to create a whole bunch of more programs. I think we can put them under one umbrella and have multiple different issues that are supervised by one entity with support. So I agree with you, I guess, in a long-winded way. Drug court started in January 2020 during COVID. We currently have 11 clients, no one pending. One is going to be graduating in May. Our first drug court client is graduating in May. And we will forward you more information as we have date and time for that. We're expecting a really big turnout for that graduation. He's done really amazing stuff, so we're really excited about it. One of the things I want to talk to you about at the end, but I'll talk about it now, is I talked with the Judge Huff and the drug court team a couple of weeks ago. I met with them and I said, we ran the pilot really for 2 years because of COVID. We weren't sure what was going to happen this year. I wanted to know what they thought the capacity of drug court really is. If we were doing the full court, what is it? And the judge and the team really feel like that the capacity of drug court is 25. That there's a lot of intensity. They meet weekly with all the participants. They meet once a month. Well, they meet once a month with everyone, and then every Friday they have different people come in based on their phase. And so there's just a lot of team meetings and teamwork that's involved in that. And so they would like the capacity to be 25, and they would like to go full on in 2022, assuming that's approved by you all at budget.
Pam, this is Commissioner Portillo again. I have a
Sure.
question about the drug court. So one of the big benefits of any specialized court, drug court, behavioral health court, any of these types of specialized programs, is really that courtroom work group coming together to have those conversations and focus on rehabilitation of the client collaboratively. obviously we have folks from your office, the bench, the district attorney's office. Do we have the same defense attorney across our specialized programs? How do we make sure that the knowledge and information of working in a specialized court like that, because it's a collaborative process rather than an adversarial process. So it's really different than our traditional criminal system. How do we train the defense attorney or prepare the defense attorney for that environment? And then
When
how
they're
are those
assigned to that
lessons shared?
court, there are defense counsel that we pay to just be on that court. And then
So
they,
is it the same between the two courts?
no, it's not the same between the two courts. There's attorneys that are assigned, defense attorneys that are assigned to BHC, and their defense counsel assigned to drug court. They're not the same necessarily.
Okay, so
So they
They're-
specialize in that court and they help make sure that the rights of those clients are protected, that nobody's doing anything that we shouldn't be doing. And then if it needs to be referred back, then it will go back to a different attorney. But it will stay in Judge Huff's court if they actually fail. We haven't had any failures that I'm aware of. So we do have counsel that just cover those specific specialty courts, but we don't have the same counsel for both specialty courts. And
Do we know
enhanced
if the
diversion, we're
attorneys-
paying for fees for defense attorneys to review diversion with the client before they agree. So we do pay for legal services for defense counsel for diversion clients.
and those are separate defense counsel than the separate BHS and separate drug court?
Defense counsel for diversion can be any defense counsel. It's whoever's assigned to that client. We just agree to pay the fees for the diversion meetings so that they make sure that the rights of their clients are covered.
I really appreciate that we have defense counsel in all these spaces from a rights perspective. What type of training do we have for attorneys on both sides? Like, have attorneys from the district attorney's office and do we have defense counsel? Do they have any sort of training for specialized courts?
We sent some of them to the drug court. There's a drug court national conference. It was done virtually. I mean, last year, and I think we had the judge, our staff, and one attorney. I can't remember who all attended, but we paid for a number of people to attend, and then I think some of our agencies also paid for some people to attend from DECA. So we're trying to, I mean, during the virtual world, it's not ideal, but we definitely want to move in that direction to make sure. And they've tried to establish kind of a drug court group in Kansas because there are just not that many drug courts, although they function a lot differently. We feel like we can learn from each other as we move forward, but we definitely probably need to work on better training. And hopefully when things become less virtual, we can send more folks to conferences and stuff so they can meet folks that do the same kind of work for specialty courts that they do.
Thanks.
But we tried to be really careful to make sure people were represented. Do we have any other questions about drug court? Then we have Holly here to cover adult community corrections. Our ADP right now is 161 clients. Really, as a department, our whole department sees about 500 people at any given time that we supervise in various different capacities. And 161 of those folks are with community corrections. Our ADP last year was 202, so it's gone down somewhat. That fluctuates month to month anyway. I submitted the grant applications, which you'll be having on your consent agenda today for community corrections for adults, juvenile ISP, the reinvestment grants, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. Currently, the juvenile adult world, we're changing over to a new Department of Corrections database called Athena. We're in the second week of it. Let me just say it's been quite something. We actually merged 3 databases into one. And so we're all putting our information. It's hopefully going to be more robust in terms of getting data back from them. So we can look at outcomes and things like that that are really important to us. All the staff in community corrections are trained to do the LSIR risk assessment instrument. We also have training. We're switching over from the LSIR level of service inventory revised to the LSCMI, Level of Service Case Management Inventory System. That's going to happen in July. They're very similar. And all the staff have been trained on WRNA, which is a new women's risk assessment instrument, which also I think goes live July 1st. So we're switching over to a couple of different instruments that we haven't used in the past. We're still doing some evidence-based programming virtually. Some people are coming in person who don't have access to virtual methods, but we're doing some decisions points classes with clients. We're meeting with them. All the staff are back in the office currently. We're meeting with clients in person or via Zoom or via iPhone or whatever method's easiest for our clients. And we're doing UAs, and we're getting ready to pilot a random program for random UAs that the court requested. The staff all use some response. We have a response reward grid that we developed in the last about 2 years ago. We also use the EPICS tool, which is effective practices in community supervision. And we also use the CARRY guides to help us provide some programming and specific worksheets and guides to help clients learn more about their thinking and how to think differently, and kind of look at how you came to this way of thinking and maybe looking at different ways of thinking about things. So we're doing a lot of problem solving kind of stuff with the clients on community corrections. And the last year we've used quite a bit of the housing assistant funds. The county has funded housing assistance funds, and we use it department-wide for anybody who might need help with housing of any kind. And we really kind of want to change that fund to be called basically barrier reduction funds, because sometimes it's not just housing, it can be medication, it can be a lot of different things that present problems for our clients. And so we want to kind of be a little more sensitive to the fact that not every need is a housing need. So we'll talk about that when budget comes around. Do we have any questions about community corrections that Holly and I can answer for you? I know we're just throwing you a lot of stuff.
Pam, this is Commissioner Kelly. Any of the evidence-based programs have a cost associated with them to your clients?
Yes, we charge, what is it, $25, Holly, do you remember?
Yes, we charge a $25 fee. It's a one-time thing if clients are participating in like cognitive programming to just help recoup the cost of materials and that sort of thing. So if they were in 2 different programs or 3 different programs or whatever, it still just costs them $25.
And we've talked about eliminating those fees. And at this point, I mean, we're not collecting a lot of money. I want to say with UA fees and program fees, it's probably less than $10,000 a year. So that's something we can talk about if that's something you're interested in.
Do you perceive, and sometimes we don't see the barriers that are there, right? So do you perceive that it is a barrier?
I think for some of our clients it is.
Okay. Thanks.
And I would rather base it on, like, I would like to look at a system where if you're complying with what we would need you to do, these are the things we're asking you to do and you're doing it, to me, there shouldn't be any fees. It's when you're not complying. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of half dozen other. I don't know. I'm not a big fee person.
Thanks.
Personally.
I mean, this is Commissioner Portillo, I very much agree with that not a big fees piece. I would be really hesitant to connect fees to non-compliance, because what we see from the research is that when we support folks, we have better outcomes. If we use fees as a punitive measure, typically that doesn't improve outcomes for people, and we're not really recouping our costs in any sort of meaningful way. We're often creating barriers from people making pro-social choices and getting successfully off of supervision. So fees as a punitive practice,
Yeah.
I'm very anti that.
Yeah. Well, we see it very similarly. It's hard because there's no tie between what this costs and what you're doing. I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and we're not recovering enough to put in your eye anyway. And so there's a cost to recovering money that you're never going to see. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle of what do you do?
Well, and a lot of our clients already owe a lot of money in fees to the, for court costs and, restitution and all of that other stuff that's over and above, so it's probably already kind of a burden for them.
Yeah. Any other questions? I want to jump over anything. Then I've kind of talked about programs that both the district and the municipal court use. And the first one is the house arrest program, which we started in October of 2017. It's been heavily utilized, and I think the court's become really comfortable with using it. They're basically a house arrest and there's electronic monitoring. They're kind of two different things. House arrest, we're monitoring how much time you're in the house. So you can be away for a job, but none of the time counts until you're in the house. So we have a beacon, and the beacon tracks the time that the client is in the residence. So for instance, if you owe 2,000 plus hours for DUI, your time is only counted when you're in the residence. So you can be out and about for jobs. I mean, you definitely have to have permission to be out, but you're restricted to the residence purely for the purpose of serving time in detention at home. Then there's electronic monitoring, which is different in that you're not necessarily restricted to the house, but you may have restrictions. For instance, if you have a victim, the victim's residence may be an exclusion zone, and there'll be a zone around it. So we're notified anytime that client enters the zone where they don't belong. Or if they're not allowed to go to a certain business, that can be in the exclusion. If they're not allowed to leave the county can be an inclusion zone. So anytime they leave the county, we are notified. They can have the state as an inclusion zone where they're allowed to leave the state of Kansas, and we'll have a zone around the entire state of Kansas, and it'll notify us when they leave the state. So there are a number of ways that you can use electronic monitoring to monitor the location of that person to make sure that victims are safe and that they're not where they don't belong. We serve far more people on electronic monitoring than we do on house arrest. So currently we have 30 individuals on house arrest, 30 adults and 6 juveniles, so it's 36 in total. And we're using them to keep, basically house arrest is an effort to keep people out of jail and serving time at home. Detention center staff monitor the house arrest alerts in the evenings and weekends, and they notify law enforcement if we need to do a safety and welfare check. They also call clients who miss breathalyzers, things like that. So we have a SL2 that does a breathalyzer in the field that clients can carry. It comes in a little wallet. We notify them on the cell phone to take tests, or we give them a schedule card if they don't happen to have a cell service, that they're required to breathe in at certain periods of the day, certain times of day. And we monitor those check-ins. It's also got a photographic ID so we can verify that that's the person doing the breath test. And so it's fairly, they're able to be fairly mobile with it. I mean, they can take it with them wherever they go. And the electronic monitoring equipment, there's a battery. It just basically you put it on the unit, it charges it up after like an hour, maybe a little more, and then it lasts for a number of hours, usually a day or more. And so that nobody's tethered to an electrical outlet trying to recharge a house arrest unit or electronic monitoring unit. You can keep your battery charged in the unit and then just recharge your ankle bracelet as needed, usually once a day. Like I said, it's kind of gone up in use. I think last year we had 109 folks on house arrest with the municipal court, and we had 97 people on house arrest with the Douglas County Court.
Pam, this is Commissioner Reed here.
Yeah.
So I was curious to understand more about municipal courts' use of the house arrest program, and also just to clarify if there's any other services that Douglas County Criminal Justice Services provides that that are available to both courts. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like the house arrest is the one where that's the case. And so I guess I'm curious about, sorry, I didn't think through the articulation of my question. Well, you said 109 cases last year referred by municipal or ordered by municipal court. What does payment and services of that look like? I mean, because all the other services you provide are specific to district court and people who have district court charges. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. There is no cost to clients, no matter which court assigns them.
Is there a cost that municipal court pays to county
No.
services?
I mean, the goal was to get people out of jail.
Yeah, got it.
And so at the time when we started the program, there hasn't been any conversations about it. We talked with Judge Miller before about it. Just hasn't really gone anywhere in terms of the city funding it. I'm sure it's going to be a future discussion. The goal was really to encourage the city to use the house arrest program and avoid people being in jail. And it has worked. And we've served a number of people over the last 3 years, a significant number that would have sat in jail to do the same amount of time.
Would you say, I missed what number you said last year for district court? 90?
District court was 97, the year
97.
before was 98, before that was 72.
So it's not a huge difference, but is municipal court using it at a higher rate year after year?
Yeah, well, not higher, but higher than the district court.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, last year was sort of an anomaly, so you can't really judge much from that. Because
Fair
I'm not
enough.
sure they picked up the same number of people they would have previously. So
Mhm.
probably the 2019 number might be more accurate, a more accurate reflection of a typical year. We did have a conversation, and Shannon can remind me if I don't have it correct, but we did talk to him about doing pretrial supervision to try and encourage more people to get out sooner.
That was going to be my other question.
And we didn't really get very far with it. I think at the time Libby was leaving the court, the municipal court, and she's their probation officer, I think is her title.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they've replaced that position. Right now it's operated by 3 clerical people that work part-time. So we haven't had the same continuity of communication that we've had in the past. We're still willing to discuss the option, but really weren't sure who to address the question to at this point other than Judge Miller.
Okay, that's helpful, Pam. Thanks.
This is Sarah. I guess I'd want to chime in a little bit on this one just to say, this is an area that I have identified for future conversations related to our city-county agreements. I think we all agree that trying to maintain jail population is an important goal, but that doesn't mean that perhaps the city of Lawrence couldn't help provide this service for the community in addition to Douglas County, not looking to charge fees to clients, but looking to provide some assistance from our intergovernmental partners. So it's on my list.
Good to know, Sarah. Thanks.
And then the second program is a mutual program between municipal district court is community service work. We just hired a new person here recently, Lacey Wiley. And I don't have the hours, but we usually have an annual report that kind of shows you what agencies received services from community service work clients, how many hours they served. It's significant. This program has been around, our mutual program between the city and the county since 1982, before my tenure at the county. So I don't have as much background on how that agreement was made, but it helps a lot in terms of folks being able to work off fines and fees with community service work. It's been a little more difficult to do it during COVID because of the matching and putting people in COVID situations was not ideal. But it seems like it's opening up slowly, and we hope to have a more robust program this next year. We do some community things like cleaning up downtown and car washes and various things like that. But you have to keep in mind, these folks have jobs oftentimes, and so we have to work around their job to get those community service work hours. So it's not always ideal to do group projects, just because of the nature of the clients that we're serving. They're just regular people like you and I who have jobs and responsibilities that don't necessarily allow them to do things at a prescribed time. The next,
Yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Commissioner-
Kelly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
I'm hoping you can help me make some sense, because I'm especially looking at the chart on page 3 of your report, which is the adult services yearly totals.
Mhm.
And it just struck me on some of these charts as I looked at them, and I may be looking at them incorrectly, so I hope you'll correct me, that we've seen a significant drop off in our jail population throughout 2020. And while we saw some drop off on these charts, we didn't see the same amount of drop off and maybe, I mean, I didn't do the statistical analysis to look at total jail population and if those percentages going down were exactly the same as what we see here. But I'm just interested if you can make any sense. It did drop off a bit between 2019 and 2020, because what I hear in the community a lot is, well, people are committing less crimes. Sometimes you hear, maybe we're not picking up as many. I heard you say that we're not picking up as many people. Do you have any, can we make any assumptions based on the data in your charts, or can you match, just what you see with what the data says on the number of offenses that were committed in 2020 and the use of these services? Is my question making sense?
Oh, kind of. I mean, I don't know that I can make any assumptions out of the data. I mean, it's been interesting. I expected the pretrial numbers to go up as we try to keep people out of jail. Now, the question though is, if we had less people to move to pretrial, the numbers would stay fairly static, which is really kind of what happened. So we didn't really see jail drop, PTR go up. We just saw jail drop and PTR stay pretty much the same. So I just don't know if, the people who are left in jail are essentially people that are awaiting hearings and have fairly serious offenses, and generally they're complicated. That's what people don't understand, is they might have a hold from another jurisdiction or a warrant from another state, or all these things that preclude us from putting them on pretrial because they have all these other wants and warrants. And so until they get that resolved, which often they do, the court will come back to us and say, would you re-review this person for pretrial now that they've cleaned up these other warrants and holds from other communities? And generally they do qualify as soon as those things are cleaned up. But yeah, I would have guessed the numbers would go higher than they have. So I'm not sure what that means, but I do know the pool of people we're reviewing is much smaller. We probably ought to look at the number of people we reviewed, but we still have a really high acceptance rate. So it's not like people are sitting there not getting served.
Yeah, I'm not sure what.
I'm not sure I answered your question, but I think it's interesting because it's not what you would think.
Yeah, and Shannon Young, looks like you're about to jump in there, so.
Yeah, this is Shannon Young. I was just going to say, some of the numbers from 2020 may be because of COVID. A lot of the people that we had in our programs, they pretty much just stayed idle because the courts just shut down. So like our pretrial release went up slightly because we were putting people on consistently, but people weren't getting off because the courts weren't operating. So some of those numbers might be a little skewed because of COVID.
What might be interesting is if we went back and looked at the data and looked at average length of stay on pretrial. I would say that would be where you'd see the increase. The people sat there waiting for court hearings that weren't going to happen.
Thanks. I'm just trying to make some sense of that data. It sounds like we're still struggling to make sense of some of this data. So.
Well, we might want to take a look at that, the average length of stay on pretrial, and just see what that looks like. I'll have Matt try and pull that for us just to take a look, because I bet you that number is really skewed. Shannon, did you have a question?
I did, but it left me. So if it comes back, I'll pop back in.
You're a little young
Yeah.
for that.
I have the answer for the enhanced max, the one that has the cash surety bond associated with pretrial release. And it looks like since we've been tracking from 2017 when we started our program, we've had 18 reports submitted that were enhanced max. So, and also I just wanted to also correct myself from earlier. We had 33 graduates from behavioral health court, not 30. So I apologize.
So it's a moving number. I thought next we'd talk about juvenile programs. Detention obviously has been here since 1995. We've done an exceptional job with juvenile justice reform before reform even happened. We've been working with the Annie Casey Foundation since 2011 on reform work in Douglas County. And we've seen the benefits of that in detention. I mean, our numbers are very low. I think our population today is 5. One of those is Douglas County, the rest are not. We still serve the Northeast Kansas area, but because of reform, we're not seeing kids. Fortunately, youth don't qualify for detention. And it's been a learning process as people understand, you know, just because they did these things doesn't mean they need to be detained. And it actually takes a pretty high score to get in detention. We do some overrides for things like if there's a gun involved, that's an override. No matter what the score is, they're going to be detained till the court can see them. What we've learned though is that there's sometimes this lag between a youth that comes into intake that doesn't qualify, but we feel like that somebody needs to be paying attention to them. And we're having conversations with the district attorney and hopefully with the juvenile court judge about the possibility of authorizing house arrest, like electronic monitoring, really not house arrest, electronic monitoring at intake that would trigger the detention hearing so the court could see this youth so that we could make sure that they're getting some kind of supervision between the time that the alleged offense occurred and their next hearing, the next time they come before the court. Especially with young people, when the consequences of supervision happen so far later, there's no correlation to be between what happened and why they're being supervised now. It's like there's just too much time difference. So we're working on some things to be a little more creative about it. The detention center went through a pretty rigorous evaluation with Annie Casey Foundation on our practices and how we do things. And we did make some significant changes. We don't have staff in the same kind of military type uniforms. We made some adjustments in our behavior management program. We now use positive behavior supports, and we track the interactions that staff have with youth weekly. We talk about how many positive interactions they have with youth and how many negative interactions, and we track restraints if there are any. We haven't had any, knock on wood. Did we have any last year, Lee? We can hear you.
Sorry, but we had 3 last year.
3 last year. So we really, I mean, for us, putting hands on somebody is lose-lose. I mean, we lose, they lose. We try and do everything we can to de-escalate a situation so we're not putting hands on people. And we do track it. We track the staff involved, the time of day it happened. So we can kind of see what's going on so we can make some data decisions in terms of what we need to adjust to make it right. And we've been really fortunate. We have a really great team of staff here, and we really, I mean, it's not an ideal situation being incarcerated, but you know, if you talk to the kids, they'd rather be here than anywhere else. So we feel good about that, even though I know detention on its face can be quite negative. Day school has been here since 1998. We have, how many kiddos in day school? 30, no.
20.
20. We have 20 in day school currently. 13 of them are assigned for truancy issues. So they're really children in need of care, but they're assigned here for truancy. Over the years, I mean, the numbers this year are kind of wonky because of COVID. There was a lot of time we were working virtually with the students. We were actually monitoring for the teachers and actually use some of the same behavior management tools, even though it was virtual. Interestingly enough, they follow them even when you're not in the room. But it's been a great partnership between the school district, the courts, and the county. It's kept a lot of kids in school, on track, get caught up to graduate. I mean, our goal is really to help kids get realigned to graduation, hopefully, or looking at some kind of vocational stuff. So we feel like it's been a really successful program. The license for day school is tied to detention, which I'll talk about later, which makes the detention decisions more difficult for us.
Pam, this is Commissioner Reed here. I
Yeah.
remembered my question because I thought of another one that's connected. I'm curious now, with day school, is that partnership just with the Lawrence School District, or do all the Douglas County school districts, are they all in partnership with you and make referrals?
Yes. Now,
Okay.
USD 497 provides all the educational support, teaching, instruction, and paraprofessional support and academic materials. And they provide the breakfast and lunch for day school and residents. But the school districts, Eudora, Baldwin, Lecompton, can all have youth come to day school. Generally, their responsibility is to transport them
Okay.
from their home school to day school.
Okay.
So-
And that made me remember my earlier question, which was for the house arrest, is it only Lawrence Municipal Court and Douglas County District Court that uses that, or do Eudora?
Currently, that's all
Baldwin?
that's using it. If there's a municipal court in Baldwin and Eudora that want to use it, they've never approached us, or
Got
they would certainly be welcome to use it.
Thank you.
Certainly. The next program is juvenile intake and assessment. We started operating juvenile intake and assessment in July of 2018. It used to be operated by the Shelter Incorporated, but it came under the Criminal Justice Services umbrella back in July of 2018. And that's kind of about the same time the Child Needed Care Code changed, where we were no longer able to house child needed care youth in detention. And we don't really, I think, Lee, do you have the numbers for intake?
Yes, to date, we've had, well, in this fiscal year, which was July 1 to today, we've had 187 youth come through juvenile intake. In 2020, we had 248. So that would be youth. That would be, it's basically the first stop for any youth in Douglas County. They're a couple of months old up to either 17 years old. So they come to juvenile, police bring them to juvenile intake, and we do an assessment on what needs to happen with the child.
And so that's both child in care and juvenile offenders. And that we have on-call intake staff, and our JDC staff operate intake the bulk of the the evening and weekend hours. So all the staff are trained to do juvenile intake. They're trained to do the house arrest monitoring. They do all the drug screens for drug court in the evenings and weekends. So they're doing a lot of, nobody's just sitting on their laurels over here. They're working. The next program is Immediate Intervention Program, which is essentially juvenile diversion. And we've been doing that since July of 2017. That was part of Senate Bill 367. Interestingly enough, it's supposedly required, although there are a number of jurisdictions who don't have it. We've gotten better about the district attorney making referrals for IIP that are appropriate. Sometimes because we have placements here in town like O'Connell, the shelter, the group homes, if those youth need to have an IIP, it doesn't always work because they move to another location and we have no way to find them or provide them a service. And so we're not doing as many referral of those youth any longer. We're being a little more specific about they need to be a Douglas County resident or housed in Douglas County for a long period of time. So IIP youth, we have 26 currently. And we've diverted hundreds of kids over the years, and it's prescribed. It's very similar we actually use the template for IIP with the enhanced diversion, where it has prescribed timeframes. And actually the lowest levels, all we do is we sign you up and verify you haven't done anything to come to the attention of law enforcement, and then we close it. We actually never meet with the client other than to sign them up. So there's, once again, it's the risk principle. We're trying to not over supervise young folks. Then the next thing I'm just talking about is conditions of release, which is essentially if a youth, and this is what we're trying to work out, but any youth is detained can then be released on conditions of release and not be adjudicated. So we're going to supervise them for that period of time. And so once we get to a point in time where they might be adjudicated, we're going to consider all their conditions of release time as part of their supervision time. So if they're compliant and they're doing all the things we need them to do, we're going to ask for time credit for the time that they served on conditions of release as part of their probation agreement. So say if a kid qualifies for 12 months of probation and they did 8 months of CORs, we're going to say we only want to supervise them for the remaining 4 months, not 12. We've already supervised them for 8. So we want to be done with it based on what the needs of that young person is. And so what we want to do is have the ability to assign kids to a COR, conditions of release, at intake. If the charge is serious enough that they would be detained, we could put them on electronic monitoring, put them on conditions of release, and then have a detention hearing within 48 hours. That's what ideally we want to do, so that we get kids back home and we don't supervise them too heavily without the court's jurisdiction over that supervision. Conditions of release can be assigned by the district attorney's office or by the court, either one. Case management has been around since 1998. We don't have very many youth on case management. I think we're going to have one, and that's been the first one in several years. Generally, youth that need to be placed out of the home are in the child, they're served in the child needed care side of the world. We generally don't have kids in custody of the Department of Corrections. We will have one currently, but we don't generally have that. And then we have juvenile community corrections. They supervise youth that are assigned for probation purposes, and they also supervise the conditions of release kids. They supervise the IIP youth. They also do the conditional release youth from the youth center, interstate compact juveniles from other jurisdictions, courtesy supervisions from other jurisdictions. So I think in total we have about 90 youth that we're supervising out here on various levels of supervision based on what their needs are at that any given time. So that kind of gives you an idea of who we're seeing on the juvenile offender type side. And then we also have the KU Truancy Program, Truancy Diversion Program. We've been doing that program since 2011. It used to be supervised by what was once called SRS, or which is now DCF. But they were not going to supervise it any longer. And we felt like that's an entry point for a lot of our kids. If you're struggling to get to school, the tendency then is to get deeper into the system. And we really want to avoid that. So we supervise the truancy program with the KU Applied Behavioral Sciences Department. And they provide interns, student interns that are in their senior year, who do mentoring for the youth that are assigned to truancy, that are in violation of school compulsory attendance laws. And we supervise the truancy cases for kindergarten through middle school. High school students go to the Shelter Incorporated program, because once you hit high school, you can actually be signed out. You don't have the same attendance rules as you do as a young person. One of the things we learned when we took over the programs, we had to get car seats because some of our students are young enough that they have to have a car seat. So when the students would take them out to do activities, we had to provide a car seat for them. One of the things we have a little concern about is that we understand that KU is eliminating the Applied Behavioral Sciences Juvenile Justice curriculum. And I know that the person who's currently overseeing the program is trying to work with the Lifespan Institute to see if we can find another location for it. It's a program that Douglas County's had since the 70s. We've had the Truancy Program forever. And it plays a vital role in keeping kids out of the system and hopefully keeping them connected to school. So I will update you as I learn more about that and what's going to happen with that. We understand that it's currently going to be operational through the end of the 2022 school year, that next spring, but I don't know what is going to result after that. Then briefly, I just talked about in the end about we have some other juvenile justice funds. We use some of our comprehensive grant monies for the Truancy Program. We fund in part, and we also provide a small stipend to the Burke-Nash Rat Program from the comprehensive grant funds for prevention. Then we have other juvenile funds, which is the reinvestment grant funds. And Lee, do you want to talk about those things that you guys are doing? No, you don't.
We love public speaking, Pam. Okay, yeah, so we do Crossroads, Parenting Project, and Decision Points. We also partner with the Boys and Girls Club that, so some pro-social after-school activities for the youth. They basically reserve, I think it's like 20 slots for our youth. Let's see, and then we also do Strengthening Families Program, which is near and dear to my heart because, you know, heavily involved in it. It takes a lot of work. We partner with the Lawrence Community Shelter, Willow Domestic Violence Center, the Children's Shelter, KVC, DCF, I mean, just a bunch of different organizations that have came together to help us present this curriculum to the community. And it's what we do is it's a 14-week program where families from each of our different various organizations are referred for the program. And we teach a parenting curriculum and then a teen, a 3 to 5 year old, and a 6 to 11-year-old. And then we also provide childcare. So we provide a meal for that. When we start the night off, we all sit down together and have a big dinner together, and then we separate into our groups. We present the curriculum, and we bring them all back together, and we practice kind of what we've learned. And so the whole, you know, the point or the goals of it is to help these families sort of reconnect. It's one of those deals where, for me, I mean, I didn't realize the food insecurity that there was in this community until doing this program. People would come and they would come hungry. We had a mom that said, you know, I wasn't able to get to Just Food before they closed. So if you have leftovers, can I have them? So then we just started you know, filling her stuff up with. So we made sure after that to have plenty of leftovers to send home with everybody. And then we actually partner with Just Foods to have a pantry there on site when we at the church, and we have the Central United Methodist Church on Mass, and we would have food there for them if they wanted to take stuff home from there. But anyway, so the program really is designed to talk about, it's not just like consequences, but it's about positive reinforcement. I mean, these parents are tired and they just kind of given up. So even just to reintroduce saying the words, I love you, to your kid when you're annoyed, you know, you're really tired of all of the stuff you're going through. So it's been a really rewarding experience. And we're getting ready to launch another parenting program. It's called Parent Project. And that is put on, the Kansas Department of Corrections has provided training for the state for all of the jurisdictions to start using that with our parents. And I'm excited to get that one going. And we're doing Crossroads, and I think I said Decision Points. So Decision Points is something that we have introduced into the detention center. So it kind of just talks about, you know, kids get into this decision cycle and you start doing the same thing over and over and over again. You know, the whole definition of insanity, do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. So it's trying to talk about stop that decision before it gets you to X, Y, and Z. And the great thing about decision points is I think it's a 5-week program, and at any time, if we get a new kid, they can just jump in any time, because each week you start at basically square one to start to going over the the steps on making those decisions. So that's been a good addition for our JDC staff, and our JDC staff do teach that. We also provide therapeutic supports. So part of our reinvestment grant, we were set aside funds to pay for therapy, domestic violence assessments, classes, medications. So it kind of helps if parents don't have insurance, or they just need a little help to get it set up, we can use those funds to help those youth out.
And we had a case where a young man, his parents were undocumented, so we paid for all of his therapy because we didn't want to have to compromise the family anyway to get those services. Just to give you an idea. The thing about decision points, which we also use on the adult side, is it's open-ended. So we don't have to, so you don't have to start over if you miss a few sessions. You can start wherever you're at, and we can go forward from there. So it works out really a lot better for our clients than, say, for Thinking for a Change, which is closed, and you have to do the prescribed amount or you can't pass. And so we feel like getting anything is better than not being able to finish the ones that you start. And lastly, we have the regional collaboration grant, which we do with Johnson County. We have this discovery program that they operate out of Peasley Tech, and the kids go in and learn about career interests, and they do a bunch of classes about employment, and then they also will help them pay for some VOTEC classes in their area of interest, or junior college classes. It's to try and get kids familiar with what's out there, what's available to me, what I might be interested in, because sometimes it's really hard to know what kind of career you want when you really just don't have any exposure to it. And so we have a number of youth that are generally older clients that we really encourage them to participate in that, to learn more about what they might want to do in life. Just some future challenges, discussions I wanted to talk about. We've been talking about validating our pretrial tool, assessment tool. We're also talking about being an accredited program. We're kind of looking at a lot of different options to try and make it the best program we can. One of the things I'd like to propose next year is embedding a Heartland Rate Act person, care coordinator in the departments that can help us with those BHC light clients, or people who need drug and alcohol help but don't need to go all the way to drug court, or enhanced diversion clients who just need therapeutic supports, and our community correction clients, anybody that we need a little help getting them set up with services and kind of encouraged to participate. We want to do something like that. And then probably you'll see a request for another additional adult services officer to help us with supervision of enhanced diversion, more as a placekeeper, because we're expecting that to blow up with numbers. We expect those numbers to really increase as COVID opens up. We're going to have more options to supervise folks. And right now that's kind of absorbed by Shannon and her staff, but we anticipate that we'll have a greater need for that service as we move forward. And I think I've talked about everything else that I had on my list of things that we might want to discuss. The future of JDC is one of those. Like I said, we're doing things, the staff are doing things far more than JDC. They help with the drug court UA drops in the weekends and evenings. They do all the house arrest and electronic monitoring, and they actually set up clients on house arrest on the weekends and evenings. They know how to do all that. They do juvenile intake and assessment. They help us operate that. They help us do all the programming that we're doing, decision points, the family class. The staff all help with that, help provide childcare for those clients. So they're so heavily involved in everything we do. It would be really hard for us we'd have to figure out how we're going to cover all that. And right now I don't have a good solution to that. The other thing is that the license for the detention center is tied to the day school. So you cannot have day school without the detention center. We did clarify that with DCF last year, and they said, once you close JDC, you close day school. And the day school has been incredibly successful in terms of helping kids get re-engaged in school in a successful way. So we want to figure out what we want to do moving forward. But we feel really good about the services that the staff provide, and we've got an incredible team, like I said, and your support has been invaluable in making that a possibility for us. I do like talking about the department, but I do tend to ramble on.
This is Commissioner Portillo. Pam, I really appreciate the broad overview. I don't have any additional questions. Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Reed, do you have any additional questions?
I don't. I just appreciate the overview. I'll follow up with you, Pam, on KU Truancy. I might have some ideas on that because I have seen the success of that in some cases, and sometimes we've struggled with success on the Truancy program, to be honest. And I'll give you a call. We'll talk about that a little bit because I want to learn more about what solutions you might have and what possible partnerships we could look into that. So just really appreciate the overview of all of this. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
Commissioner Reed here. I don't have any other questions either. Just echo the gratitude and also mention, Lee, that I think you're a great public speaker and that was a wonderful overview. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for the wonderful learning session. And if we don't have anything else, oh, Sarah just unmuted, so we might have something else.
Well, I was just going to mention, originally, I thought the sheriff was also going to present today, but clearly we've had so many wonderful questions for Pam and her team. So I will work with the sheriff to find another opportunity to get before the commission.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, with that, I think we will recess until our business meeting at 5:30.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.